Schofield here, talking about the interesting topic of exercise and weight loss. So can you just leave your diet as it is and train your way into great shape, lose that fat and so on? And I guess there's actual research on this. So the answer, I think, is pretty firmly no. You can not gain weight in the first place, and exercise plays a primary role in that. Can you leave your diet exactly as it is and lose fat loss just by upping the calories out your exercise? And it's actually a fairly limited, small and sometimes not noticeable effect. Ideally, diet is the primary thing to change, and exercise, I think, plays an auxiliary role. Not to say though that being fit and active is not independently good for you. It's one of the most important things you can do for your health. Fitness is medicine. If you are physically active, then you're going to live a good, long, healthy life, be better and more awesome at just about everything. If that's not reason enough, then I don't know what is. But I think, secondly, the other thing to think about here is that exercise and fitness can play an auxiliary role in managing your health, particularly looking at weight loss. One of the primary things we talk about weight loss, and we think about calories in and calories out as being an old model that's much too simple to actually understand the metabolic complexity of being a human and the feedback systems that exist around hormones, particularly the one that really drives our energy homeostasis, that's insulin. Well, being physically active and fit, i.e. exercising, really improves insulin sensitivity. And that's an important thing, because the more insulin sensitive you are, the more easily you'll be able to manipulate insulin down and get the normal homeostasis of being in good shape working. You'll still have to change your diet. You can't continue to eat the standard American diet, or just that's refined processed food, particularly carbs and sugar. You can't do that. You have to change that as well, but I think it can be more effective the more insulin sensitive you become. So that's an important auxiliary role, drives insulin sensitivity. There's a couple of other auxiliary roles that exercise might play. So we've talked about insulin sensitivity. The second is that you're probably going to drive muscle mass, which is a metabolically active organ, which in itself makes you more insulin sensitive, but probably consumes a bit more energy. It's good for you anyway. The third overlooked one, I think, is that being fit and being active, particularly outdoors, drives brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor, BDNF, and frontal cortex development. And this is an important part of the brain just behind your head here, because it controls what you will and won't do. It controls your planning, a whole lot of stuff to do with overall cognition, but more importantly, that's some of your willpower. Will I say no to this treat, or will I say yes to this treat? So I also sort of feel there's some other psychological benefits from being fit and putting some effort into your health that way in terms of weight loss. It's sort of sunk cost bias. You've got some skin in the game. I've tried this hard, and I've already been doing this today, therefore I'm not going to do these other poor behaviours. I'm actually going to concentrate on doing these ones well. So my top tips for exercise, I think about probably exercising a little bit differently than what you see in the mainstream media and so on, so let you give me my top tips. First, I'm really into some easy, fasted exercise, particularly first thing in the morning. So this is easy endurance work. That'll be walking or walking up hills for some of you. Some of you are fit enough to run. All of us are just about fit enough to cycle. So that is the thing. I keep an eye on that intensity. I use Phil Maffetone's maximum aerobic function. So this is the aerobic threshold. Just when you're starting to huff and puff, you need to slow down. This is easy work that you could continue for a very long time. If you do that fasted and you're doing it easy enough, then you're going to drive autophagy, cellular cleanup. You're going to drive all the metabolism to do with driving insulin and glucose down. It's a profoundly anti-inflammatory, ketone-producing state. I've even been calling it fasting mimicking exercise, or FME. And so that's a great place to start. The trick with that, of course, is before you walk out the door that morning, particularly if you're going out with other people, is you need to get your ego, take it out of your head, put it in a brown paper bag and leave it on the kitchen counter, because you'll end up going very slowly. People who look in much worse shape than you will overtake you, and that's okay. This is easy, egoless exercise. You heard it first here, fasting mimicking exercise. Second, avoid what I call the metabolic grey zone, which is that zone just above that easy aerobic training. I see most people exercising in that zone. You're burning primarily carbohydrate as fuel, not fat, as in the fasting mimicking zone. You're not enhancing your fat burning. You're making reactive oxygen species. You're providing an inflammatory environment, and I think that elevates cortisol. A lot of people, when they're not losing weight, just train harder. You end up in that grey zone doing more damage of fatigue and so forth. Number 3, if you do some hard exercise, which if you're up to it you should do now and then, do it only periodically and briefly, and make sure you go hard enough. And so for me, yesterday I did some of that. I did some short set of sprints on the beach, and followed by 5 flights of some very steep steps that took about a minute to run up. It was really hard, but it was really short. So I'm polarizing between those. So fat burning exercise, avoid the grey zone, do the hard stuff. A couple more tips. Do some strength stuff now and then, and it doesn't have to be in a gym. In fact, gyms are often good for people, but sometimes are very socially awkward. It's a bit like being on a bus, isn't it? You can't make eye contact, especially if you're a male. It's all a bit awkward. So push-ups, pull-ups, some squats with a bag on your back or something like that will do it for most people. Getting those core big muscle groups, upper and lower body, working. You should have a range of movement in that, and that can lead into some of that strength training. Can also be mobility training. Make sure you've got a range of motion. Can you do a deep squat out there? Can you? You should be able to, and you should be able to go through that range of motion comfortably. And I see a lot of low back pain that's probably caused by the inability to do that. Last tip, if you're not enjoying it, change. Do something that you do enjoy. Exercise should be fun. So for me, that's most often outdoors with other people, with the dog, in the fresh air, hopefully by the sea or in the forest. Taking up mountain biking recently, it's a bit of fun. I'm not very good on the downhills, but we've always got something to work on. That's it, over and out. Catch you later.